only came about because both Canada and America wanted to retain their navies and fishing rights on the Great Lakes. So, in 1817, the Rush-Bagot Agreement was signed, in which both countries retained their fishing rights, but naval power was limited. Then, in 1818, another treaty was reached. This treaty, called the Convention of 1818, gave America fishing rights to the coasts of both Newfoundland and Labrador. It also settled a border dispute between Canada and America, and it set the border at 49 degrees latitude. A third effect that the Convention of 1818 had was that it also allowed both countries to occupy the Pacific Northwest. Then, in 1818, Secretary of State John Quincy Adams, who was the son of our second president, John Adams, held talks with Spanish Prime Minister Luis de Onís about what he thought of American settlers settling in Florida. All the while, President James Monroe was having General Andrew Jackson take troops into Florida to secure the American-Spanish border. In the Monroe Doctrine, James Monroe made 4 key points. 1, he said that the U.S. would not interfere in any European country's affairs. He also said that the U.S. would recognize European countries' colonies already established in the Western Hemisphere. But one of the most important points he made was that the entire Western Hemisphere was off limits to any European country wanting to settle. And the 4th point he made was that if any European country decided that they wanted to settle, they would take it as a hostile act, and the U.S. would take action.
How could you miss? It was free speech in front of you!
Americans, happy with their negotiations with the foreign powers, felt a strong sense of nationalism or feelings of loyalty and pride towards a nation. This unity was supported strongly by U.S. Representative Henry Clay from Kentucky. Henry Clay also believed in the American system, in which the United States Bank would produce only one single form of currency, which would make interstate trade easier and unite the country. In the 1800s, most roads in the U.S. were made of dirt and were kept in very poor condition. So, in the 1830s, the U.S. decided, with Henry Clay, to improve the nation's roads. In doing this, they started in Cumberland, Maryland, and went to a city named Wheeling on the Ohio River. When they built this road, they built it 66 foot wide, all by hand with shovels, and then they filled it with crushed stone. Construction on the road continued, and in 1850, it spanned all the way to Illinois. Then, with the road completed all the way to Illinois, people wanted to worry about water transportation. So, starting in 1817, they started construction on the Erie Canal. Finishing in 1825, it spread all the way from Albany to Buffalo, New York. It cost millions of dollars to make, but it was worth it as it allowed both goods and people to be transported to the East Coast. In 1819, Missouri wished to become a state. When the Senate considered Missouri's application to enter the Union as a slave state, they were worried that adding a new slave state would tip the balance of the Senate in favor of the South, since the Union already had 11 free states and 11 slave states. So, the Senate allowed Missouri to enter the Union as a slave state, but the importing of enslaved Africans would be illegal. This angered Nathaniel Macon, who was a senator, and he said, "Why depart from the good old ways that have kept us in quiet, peace, and harmony?" The Senate rejected the law making importing enslaved Africans illegal, but Missouri was still not a state. Henry Clay convinced Congress to pass the Missouri Compromise, in which Missouri would enter the Union as a slave state, but to keep the whole thing from becoming unbalanced, made one enter the Union as a free state. And from that moment forward, slavery would be prohibited, and any new states or territories made at or above 36 degrees north latitude, Missouri's border. Then, in the election of 1824, Andrew Jackson got the most popular votes, but he did not get enough electoral votes to enter office. So, under the Constitution, the House of Representatives had to choose who would take office. When they chose John Quincy Adams, all of Andrew Jackson's supporters accused Adams of making a corrupt bargain with Henry Clay. These accusations grew when John Quincy Adams chose Henry Clay to be his Secretary of State.